If you're ever alone in the deep snow-drenched forests of North America and you hear a voice calling your name, don't answer. It might not be human. Somewhere between folklore and fear lies the story of the Wendigo. Not just a legend, but a terrifying embodiment of winter's darkest hungers. It is said to haunt the northern wilderness, where cold, isolation, and desperation blur the lines between man and monster. But is the Wendigo only a cautionary tale, or something more? The Wendigo originates from the Algonquian peoples of northeastern North America, tribes like the Cree, Ojibwe, and Mi'kmaq. In their traditions, the Wendigo was both a spirit and a curse. It didn't merely haunt the woods, it crept into the hearts of humans, transforming them from within. It was said to strike in winter, when food was scarce and hope even scarcer. According to the stories, when a person resorted to cannibalism, the Wendigo spirit took hold. That person was no longer human. They became a creature of endless hunger, doomed to stalk the forest in search of more flesh, a hunger that could never be satisfied. Descriptions of the Wendigo vary between tribes and time periods, but common traits include tall and gaunt, often over 10 feet in height, flesh stretched tight over its bones, with a grayish, death-like hue, eyes like dark pits, emotionless, yet watching razor-sharp claws and elongated limbs. Some say it had a heart made of ice. Others, that it had antlers like a deer, and perhaps most terrifying, it could mimic voices. Victims spoke of hearing a loved one's voice in the woods, only to discover, too late, that they were being lured by something else entirely. Despite being rooted in ancient lore, the Wendigo hasn't stayed in the past. Reports of sightings continue, often from those who live deep in rural forests or near long stretches of untamed wilderness. In 2015, a Reddit user shared a chilling account from New Brunswick, Canada. After a brutal snowstorm, their dog ran off into the woods one night. Chasing after it, the user heard his wife's voice calling from the darkness, but she was asleep back in bed. When he turned, he saw a figure rise from the trees, spindly limbs, black eyes, humanoid yet wrong. He ran. The dog, somehow, was waiting by the house. The figure was gone. Later that year in New York, a forest contractor named John Crowder was staying alone in a remote trailhead cabin. One snowy night, he heard heavy thuds on the roof, too deliberate to be snow. Then came scratching sounds. Peering out, he sensed something watching him from the trees. The next morning, he found bare, human-like footprints outside. He never stayed there again. The Wendigo legend was so pervasive that it gave rise to a now-retired medical diagnosis: Wendigo psychosis. This rare, cultural-bound syndrome described individuals who developed an irrational craving for human flesh, even when other food sources were available. Though dismissed today by mainstream psychiatry, the condition underscores how powerful folklore can be, not just to frighten, but to shape real human behavior. Like many myths, the Wendigo may have deeper roots in cultural morality. It served as a warning against cannibalism in times of famine, against greed and selfish hoarding of resources, against the breakdown of community during hardship. The Wendigo isn't just a monster. It's a metaphor for losing one's humanity when pushed to the brink. It teaches that in extreme conditions, the real danger isn't what stalks us from the shadows. It's what we become when we surrender to our darkest instincts. Skeptics argue that modern Wendigo sightings are fabrications, misidentified wildlife, or simply products of internet-fueled paranoia. Others point to how the Wendigo image has evolved, with pop culture now portraying it as an antlered demon, which doesn't match original indigenous descriptions. Still, strange videos continue to surface. One shows a spindly figure moving just beyond a campfire's edge. Another captures a humanoid shape peering from behind a gravestone. Most are hoaxes, probably, but those who've encountered something in the woods will tell you. They know what they saw, and it wasn't human. The Wendigo survives because its message remains painfully relevant. In a world still marred by inequality, isolation, and desperation, its legend reminds us of what we risk becoming. It warns us that hunger, be it for food, power, or control, can consume more than flesh. It can consume the soul. So next time you hear a familiar voice calling from the cold woods, don't follow. Not all ghosts are from the past.